Well, greetings. We're excited to have us with us today for our Compassion-Centered Spiritual Health interview. Reverend Dr. Amy Greene, who's the director for the Center for Spiritual Care at the Cleveland Clinic. She's an ACPE educator and the immediate past chair of the board of ACPE. And we're just so thrilled that you're here to share with us some of your insights and your rich experience with CBCT and CCSH. And just to say briefly, my name is Maureen Shelton, and I am a CBCT instructor, as is Amy, as well as an ACPE educator. I direct the spiritual health department at Emory Healthcare, and I'm also the director of Compassion-Centered Spiritual Health here at the Woodruff Health Science Center. And so it's great to have these dialogues to continue to make visible the opportunities of this work for spiritual care. So Amy, again, thanks for being here, and so grateful for you as a colleague and a friend.
Thank you, likewise.
So just start off, please share with us some of your current work and where you are and your interest in this work.
Yeah, so I got interested, I was trying to think back, I got interested in CBCT probably through our, overlapping at ACPE meetings, and you were getting a lot of this off the ground. But I think also concurrently, my own youngest son was starting Emory Medical School in 2015, and he took it as part of his first year curriculum, and he really appreciated it. And so as the 2017, there was just, as always, there were just a lot of changes going on at the Cleveland Clinic and in the world and in my life. And I just thought, I really want a deeper meditation practice. And I liked what I heard about it. And I've known you and trusted you for decades as someone who's, been doing this work longer than I have. So I really appreciated, I just trusted you. So I had looked it up and was going to make plans to come to Atlanta and do it. And my husband was interested, and we decided, and as I talked about it with, I think Carol Beck is the one who put the idea in my head to bring you guys up here instead. And so you and Tim, brought you to the Cleveland Clinic in summer of 2017 for 2 different weekends, and got together a fabulous group of doctors and chaplains and just an amazing mixed group of people who took 2 weekend retreats. And really, I just did it to save my own mind. Felt like I was losing my mind, and I needed deeper practice. And I just felt like this is really going to help me, and it did, and it does. But I also got really just realized I had barely skimmed the surface by taking the initial course, and that I wanted to. For me, like a lot of other things, if I want to take a deeper dive, I usually train to do it. I'm an Enneagram teacher, so I went through that whole thing because I wanted to take as deep a dive as I could take. And so by the next year, I think I had signed up for training, 2018, 2019. So since 19, I think when I got certified, I've been offering it mostly to the incoming CPE students, to either the interns and residents. And we haven't required it per se. We've strongly encouraged it, and we've built it into the curriculum, but we haven't quite made it an official requirement. If people did want to opt out of it, they had to come up with some independent study for those hours to meet the requirements for CPE. But most people have taken it. And the nice thing has been that we could offer it I've just been able to offer it to whomever within the Cleveland Clinic system, which is a system of 75,000 employees. They're not all here in Northeast Ohio, but there are a lot of them here. So that's been really delightful. Medical students, physicians, people from all kinds of different professions, and then most of the folks on my team have rotated through at some point. And it's just really been amazing. And then even with COVID, having to do everything remotely has actually ended up being kind of a benefit in a way. It's not ever going to be the same as sitting together with people in the room, but more people have been able to participate because our system is really spread out. And so coming to main campus 7 in the morning, you know. It's a huge place. You've been here, you know. And so people who don't work on main campus, even before COVID, it was kind of a pain for them to get here. If they worked across town, it just was not tenable for them to participate. So this has made it much more available to a lot more people. The current class I only have 3 interns, CPE interns, but I have 21 people in the current class because they're from all over the enterprise. And they get up at 7 in the morning and sit and talk and learn. And it just, I find it's really for me that I teach it. I mean, I'm glad other people can benefit some, but it's mostly that I just find it helps me keep the discipline alive by teaching it. So it's been wonderful, and I plan to keep doing it.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And so appreciate your vision and your leadership and in conveying the potential benefit to the Cleveland Clinic, and how seems like you naturally see its support for our well-being as chaplains, as well as being supportive of the ACPE, CPE curriculum. And I wonder if you could just reflect a little bit about how you think the interns and residents engaging in this course of CBCT, to go through the CBCT protocol, it could be a benefit to them to meeting some of those ACPE outcomes.
Well, it's a great question, because as you know, I've wanted to extend into the CCSH curriculum as well, and I just haven't had the bandwidth yet.
Yes.
But what's been wonderful to watch is how spontaneously
the
students are using it. And so they'll come in and say, I used Nurturing Moment with a patient today, and I'm like, great. And I'm not really, it's frustrating because I feel like all this great data is sort of getting away in the meantime, while I try to get my act together to do the rest of it. But I think it happens spontaneously. As you know, because you're the one who told me, one of my students from last fall and summer was participating in a virtual one overseas across the globe on the literal other side of the world, and was singing the praises of CBCT as the reason she was surviving COVID. Lockdown with children, trying to get through school and CPE and working from home and all the other traumas that we've all been through. So that was really lovely to hear that, you know, come back around and kind of connect the world of CBCT back to us. Speaking of, you know, module 4, 5, and 5 and 6. I think it's also just been really, for me, about, I keep telling people over and over and over, every chance I get, I thought I knew what self-compassion was, and I really didn't. I really didn't know. I wasn't very good at it, and I didn't really, that's been very salvific. And I spend a lot of energy around here saying there's no such thing as compassion fatigue. It's not compassion that's killing us.
Right.
It's not too much compassion. It's too little. It's too little compassion for ourselves. As finite creatures. And Emory's not that different in not being a big fan of the word finitude or imperfection. I mean, they're both pretty proud of being great institutions that don't, you know, and I'm proud of them too. I'm very proud of both Emory and Cleveland Clinic, but we are still made up of human beings. So it's a hard place to sort of put your stake in the ground about limitations. That's not their favorite word, limitations. So it's been really life-giving, life-saving. I mean, it's really not an exaggeration. These have been even before the pandemic, these have been the hardest years of my career, the last few years, for multiple reasons. And I would say CBCT is largely why I didn't lose my mind. I was other things as well, but big stackpole was that. And so that's what I've been sharing with my students. Just like, look, you guys, I've been at this a really long time. You know, my first CPE was in 1986. I didn't stick to it right away. I took a break and came back to it, but still, you know, went to seminary a million years ago. So this has been like, it just put so many pieces together. And it's a like I said, they're spontaneously seeing the connections to
Yes.
the outcomes of CPE, to good spiritual care, to having some tools, more tools in their toolkit.
Yes.
Beyond just saying, beyond just listening, which is, of course,
Right.
we know not exactly what we're doing, but they've been pretty tickled and using it for themselves spontaneously too. That's been really gratifying to watch.
Well, that's great to hear. Yes, and I as these aha moments happen within their own, how it matches their own experience, how beautiful that is to see those aha moments. And one of the hopes for CCSH is through this protocol of teaching CCSH as a model is to just kind of organize it so that it can become more of an embodied approach. So to maybe capture some of those insights in a more sustainable way, perhaps. We're exploring, and seeing, but and I agree with you that it's such a treasure to watch as people are taking the CBCT class, because I keep learning, about the different ways of integrating into our for our benefits for our personhood as well as for our care.
Yeah.
And like you said, self-compassion has been such a huge gift to see all the different aspects of what we mean by self-compassion and breaking that down, so that then there's perhaps some more inner spaciousness for relationships as we look at, implicit bias, and as we look at the blocks to our connections with others, and taking those steps so seriously in the protocol of CBCT to have realistic ways and practical ways of engaging these things that we value so much in CPE.
Yeah.
Doing all this hard work of looking within with some more skill and grounded in warm-heartedness for ourselves.
Yeah. Well, like you mentioned, something you said made me realize it is teaching it over and over and over that I always learn something.
Yes.
So my favorite part in the teacher training was when Geshe-la or you or Tim would say, or Carol, somebody would say, okay, now, talk to each other in one insight and one question. And it's just so simple, but gosh, it was profound. And it was often where I learned the most. Or when we came back together and someone else's question I hadn't even thought to ask. And yet that would be what I got the most from, more than my own questions.
Yes.
Which are pretty infinite anyway. So I love that, because I love when a student raises a question that I'm like, I don't know. Here's my best guess, and here's here's some places you could go for more, exploration. And then the whole, it's so rich and so much like genuine compassion. It's regenerating. It's not draining. So I find teaching it is actually invigorating.
Yes.
So that's another great sort of advertisement for it.
Yes.
That it what's the word I'm looking for? It's like a hybrid battery. It runs off itself and recharges as it runs.
Yes.
And that's kind of how it feels to me. And the students pick it up. They really do. Not all of them. But I would say the vast majority, especially in the early phases when I don't do a post-course survey every time, probably should. But in the beginning, so many people said their self-compassion, that's the main thing they got out of it, was the self-compassion piece. And a similar kind of like, it's not what I thought. Yeah. Exactly. And some people are good at it, better at it. But sometimes there's just younger people who are talking, they're more narcissistic. It's like, that's probably too cruel, but sometimes I'm like, again, it's a fine distinction between, I think it's a really complicated concept, and having a structure that's rooted in this wonderful religious tradition, but also made available to any of us, whether we're from that tradition or not. I just really love it. I hope to keep teaching it till I can't do it anymore. Well, whatever that means.
that's speaks volumes, and it's I'm so grateful for that you're teaching it in all these settings and the learnings that I'm learning from you about as you're teaching it. So yeah, it's so interesting for the field of spiritual health. I think one of the aspects that we were hoping to be a benefit is that, you know, to really help people feel like they can be grounded in their own tradition.
Yeah.
But then having tools that can help them see if this is available for people to be supportive of all faith tradition, but not requiring a faith tradition.
Yep.
So this might help give us as spiritual health clinicians more of a widened sense of what could be of help.
Yes.
You know, as we and this is something we talk a lot about in CCSH, and you know, what can we do?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and all these different skills and increased capacity can help us perhaps put our focus on what we can do in a different way. And it's
the most fun for me is having, maybe because of my son, I don't know, but I love the medical students, because they're busy talking about one just yesterday's class, a medical student was on there, and she said, you know, when you talk about self-compassion or emotional intelligence, all these things, you get a lot of pushback from the sort of the medical establishment, like that's weak. You know, you're asking to slow down, and we can't slow down ever. And, you know, it just made me realize how it's not just salvific. Well, it's probably the wrong word. That's a nice religious word for it, but it's probably not as much of a lifeline. It's probably as much of a lifeline to anybody in any profession. I remember Geshe-la quoting someone back in the training. He was quoting some corporate business type who had retired and finally started taking CBCT and really learning it. And he said he'd been climbing the wrong ladder his whole life. That, that just kind of gave me chill bumps, because I was thinking, whoa, how many of us can say sometimes we might feel like we're climbing the wrong ladder? So I just think the relevance of it cuts across any of the disciplines. I've had people from finance take it. I've had people in my current class, I've got psychiatrists, medical students, counselors, chaplains, administrators.
Wow. Yeah.
And everybody says, oh man, this really helps me recenter for my day and get a perspective on things. And it helped me with that coworker that I was so annoyed with. And, you know, it's so practical. Yeah. It's so practical. That's the best part about it. It's not esoteric at all. So, yeah, I'm a big fan.
Yeah, I love that. That's your emphasis on how practical it is.
Yeah.
And the role of the meditations. How have you found that? Is people engaging meditation as part of this? And
I think people, because I am very bad at meditating, and I'm very easy, I confess that up front. So I think it's actually helpful. People that are naturally still and quiet don't need a ton of help and coaching. I'm not naturally still and quiet. And when I say to people, I teach this because I'm not very good at it. And teaching it makes me practice more, and it helps me. It's kind of like that, you know, Dan Harris meditation for fidgety skeptics. It's like, I'm not a skeptic, but I am fidgety. So if I can do it, anybody can do it. And I think what I learned over many years of sitting in other contexts too, with other types of meditators, the communal, you know, it's why we have religion. I mean, it's being together and with a common intention is very powerful.
Yes.
So people who thought they could never tolerate sitting still in silence, virtual silence, very little talking for 15 minutes, which is not that much, but for some people it can feel like an eternity if you haven't done it.
Right.
But they find that the support of other people doing it makes it really easy. And there's nothing else in our culture that provides for us as human beings to be quiet together. You think about the just constant noise. Yeah. You're in a waiting room somewhere, and somebody's got to have the radio or the TV, or everybody's got their device, and there's no kind of common way we are reverently quiet together except in meditation. And I think people are starving for it. Anyway, so that's been great too, because people have said, wow, I didn't know I could, and turns out I can.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for those illustrations of, people who struggle with it as people it's natural, as well as giving that wider hope that the being in community can make it easier. And I do think that's the beauty of the class, one of the beauties of the class. And a lot of the folks at the residents at Emory who've taken CBCT have reflected over time that they see it as a skill development, not replacing anything from their tradition.
That's right.
And it's interesting how they talk about, sometimes I'll do the CBCT meditation first to kind of focus me so that I can do my devotion if that's part of the practice.
Yeah.
In a way to get more out of that. But I don't know if you've had similar reflections. But
yeah, I have. In fact, sometimes the most religious are the most skeptical about it. Mm-hmm. And so I'll say, please try it anyway. Stop and say something if you think this is encroaching on some sacred belief of yours that feels threatened. Right. If I can't explain it in a way that alleviates your fears and anxieties, don't do it.
Right.
Which is not what I say in CPE. Right. Too bad about your fears. Come on, you got to go anyway. But with CBCT, I'm not shoving that down anybody's throat.
Exactly.
And what's interesting is I'm a Baptist, so I know the Bible pretty well, and I'll usually say, well, Jesus did say blah blah blah, and I connected a lot to my own Christianity because I'm still a Christian. I'm more of a universalist than anything else. I'm definitely a universalist. But I'm still a Christian clergy person, and I am rooted in that tradition, and I always will be, I think. And I'll use examples, of how I think this, how I interpret this as a Christian, or if someone asks, but usually that doesn't come up that much. And I think people just are really happy to find it accessible. All the stories are really universal, but a lot of them come from the Buddhist stories that we've been taught, and I really appreciate them. Buddhism, I say this a lot now, Buddhism is just better at suffering and death. It just is. Western Christianity has not done a great job. In my limited opinion, it's not done the best job of facing the fact of suffering and death in the same way that Buddhism does. Buddhism is like suffering exists, It's much more, it just feels much more pragmatic about suffering and death. Which is, of course, what we're dealing with daily.
Yeah. Yes. And one of the things that I'm enjoying in the courses of CBCT, and then as we are engaging in CCSH reflections over time, is this idea of how people are seeing some of these insights from CBCT in their faith practice. And it's been so amazing that what they're shining the light on of things that maybe have not been emphasized.
Yeah.
Around impermanence or around, all these different aspects. And it's such a rich source of conversation, these aha moments, that the skill development they've been using is so it's universal.
It is all universal. Consider the lilies of the field, teach us to number our days. These are ancient truths.
Yes.
Cut across all the religions. I was telling someone the other day, it's sort of like panning for gold, like a lot of religion has a lot of gold. All the different religions have gold, and they also have a lot of rocks and mud, and they all do. So if you're going to sift and sift and sift for gold, you can find it in most of the great religious traditions that have survived over millennia, and they're really similar. Gold looks like gold.
Yes. And over time, this kind of CBCT being this kind of condensed way of these 7 practices that we can go through over and over again to deepen our skill. I think that a lot of the practices are for me shining the light of things in our chaplain work that are so crucial to becoming more effective spiritual health clinicians.
Absolutely.
And
I really, even more than that, frankly, is my own personal sanity.
Yes.
I was practicing at 3 a.m. I can have insomnia like nobody's business, and I can sit there and stress out about it, or I can use it to meditate. And it doesn't make me go back to sleep all the time, but It beats the hell out of, oh, sorry. It beats the daylights out of,
Okay.
out of just lying there worrying, you know?
Exactly. Yeah.
And that brain training part of it is what's so appealing. I mean, I had been reading more and more about neuroplasticity even before this, and kind of thinking, wow, you can teach an old dog new tricks.
Yeah.
And there's really good news to this old dog, you
Yes.
know, and because I've got a long entrenched, I got some pretty deep grooves in there
Yeah.
for worrying about stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
And kind of trying to iron those grooves out with practice. It's really, I mean, I hate to say it, but my motivation is much more selfish. And then, like, yay for you if you can get something out of it.
Right.
You know, if I can tell you about it and you find it useful, good for you.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really at the beginning and continues to be for me just a deeply personal motivation. And even joining the community on Sundays and some days when I'm able to during the work week, it's just so gratifying to sit back in the chair of the student and be like, oh yeah, because even though the teachings are all this consistent and the same, and we really try to adhere to the, you know, stay true to the teachings, still the teacher, you know, depending on how they say it or the day you hear it or the way you hear it, just like CPE, just like it. I mean, we have the same outcomes and the same standards, but hearing it over and over, you know, makes it stick. And then the modules, like you said, the 7 components, you can pick and you can use them at different times. I tell people this. I'm like, if you remember nothing else than how to practice one of these components, you could improve your sanity by who knows how much, just stuck in traffic.
Yes.
Or mad at a neighbor. You know. Yeah. So I do care about the students, obviously.
No, but I thank you for saying it so clearly.
It's so it's just really life-giving. It's so life-giving.
And you give to so many, so thank God. Yes.
To get some recharge somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a final question. I'd love to hear any final reflections you have. This is so engaging. I love hearing you speak about this. You know, CPE has so many different layers and aspects of its curriculum. What would you say if somebody was saying, why would I add another to our curriculum, or, you know, to the work?
That's a great question. I would say because CPE has done a lot better job of talking about self-care, for lack of a better word, which I don't think is the same thing as self-compassion. That's the other piece. I don't think CPE's done a very good job of teaching. I don't learn much about self-compassion from CPE. And so I think without self-compassion, the rest kind of starts to, you really do run the risk of burning out, of being, I think, of projecting more of our own stuff, like all these other tools. I think it sharpens those tools. Yeah. I think it sharpens the CPE tools.
Yes.
Because we've got these good tools about not projecting our own shadow onto other people, and our working on our biases and our attitudes and our assumptions and our blah da da da, and that's all great, and it's very helpful and it can work really well. But I think without this underlying self-compassion, at some point it sort of runs its course, and it can become sort of rote. Like, I mean, that's a really Buddhist concept too. Like, the good butcher is not just hacking the daylights out of the meat. You know, they're like trying to go around the really hard parts of the joint. So they're not dulling their knife every time. They got to keep their knife sharp, and they use it really carefully. And I think this, for me, that's helped a lot to take the same set of tools and outcomes, but give me a little more how-to, a little more practical help with how do you actually do that? What does it look like? Yes. And then how to keep those tools sharper. That's how it's worked for me, I think.
Thank you for that summary. I appreciate that.
I wouldn't have thought of it hadn't you asked. That's what I'm saying. I love good questions.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have thought of it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wonderful. Well, any final reflections you have about this?
No, I don't think so. Something had occurred to me, but I didn't want to interrupt for a change. I usually am not very good about that either. If I think of it, I'll call you back. I think it had to do with, oh, it's gone.
Okay.
I got old age brain. It disappeared on me, but that's okay.
Yeah, that's right. It's okay.
It might be bad.
You said so many things in this, and I really valuable insights, and just I appreciate the way you embody the motivation for this. You're so willing to look at things directly,
yeah,
and I think that while you're doing that, that looking so directly, you bring so much cumulative experience and wisdom, and I appreciate the way you brought that forward to CBCT, and having you as a colleague in this work as part of, as well as our broader work of CPE, is just such a gift that keeps on giving. So
thank you. I think that was the other thing I did want to say was that in telling a CPE student, why would I add this?
Yes.
Because to me, it's like, why would you stop for food and water? Like, it's the same, it's that simple to me. Like, why would you do that? Why would you take a lunch break? You're adding, why would I add lunch to my list of things to do? Because you need it, you need food. I mean, because it's been that kind of sustenance for me. And you know, I'm telling people, I don't want to turn into some kind of evangelist. I mean, you remember Dr. Calabrese, who partnered with me to help bring you guys here in the first place. He's a big fan of meditation, and he would want me to come and do these talks to the first year med students. And at a certain point, I just felt like I was blah, 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 blah. I mean, they were being forced to listen to it. Yeah. And I finally told Lenny, I said, Lenny, look, this drags me back to the worst of my Southern Baptist roots, where if I don't evangelize the out of everybody, I'm not doing my job. And I said, I'm not becoming an evangelist for meditation. I'm just not. I'm not going to sit there and talk to people who are staring at me blank in the face. Right. My thing is, here's a banquet. Try it out. If it doesn't feed you, don't worry about it. But it feeds me, and that's why I do it. Yeah. And that's why I'd like to share it. But I'm not cramming it down your throat, because it's the worst of my religious background, my worst traditions. And I just said, I can't go back there. So that's why I don't totally require it. Yeah. Because to me, it's more pure if they're free to come to it or not. Yes. And then it's feels more life-giving, and not like one more thing I've got to do and memorize, and I didn't practice and blah blah blah. Yeah, that's been an important part in our program, that during the interview process, that people are aware of it. They know it. Yes, I think that's fair. So that they know but that's a great point, because CBCT we often will say in classes, as you know, like, this is some things you already know, but we're introducing it in a particular sequential way from, like you said, from these different angles that might have some more, spark some more insight and ways to integrate it. And that, and this is not about forcing anything, but I love that image of the banquet. Yeah. Yeah. Which I think is a New Testament image, but. Yes. But it is. I mean, and too bad for, the religions that lost the invitational quality of it. Yes. And went more after the, this is the right thing to do. But I really love it. Yeah. I really love it. And I do look forward to completing my training. Yes. As a CCSH practitioner. Yes. So that we can participate in the research part of it, because I think it's awesome. It's fabulous. Yeah. Yeah, we're getting some really good data, and we'd love to have you as part of it. Yeah, I would too. Well, I'll get there. I'm being more self-compassionate about the stuff I don't want to do, and finding ways to try to hand those opportunities over to other people. Yes. Well, thank you so much, Amy, for taking this time. You're welcome. We look forward to further conversation, and I'm so grateful for all that you do for so many, and for our association, and for CPE and CBCT. So thanks. Appreciate you too. It was fun to talk to you again. Yes. All right. Thank you so much, Amy. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.